Do you think the division we have is corporate funded, like intentionally funded to make us argue and fight? Is that
The
what I'm
media,
hearing?
the media.
Yeah.
If you that book, Hate Inc. Remember, and I say this with respect. He had some good things, and he's passed, so I don't want to. But Jerry Springer, a lot of money came from all that. That
Yeah.
show Crossfire. People want to get clicks. People want to get viewers. If it bleeds, it leads. You and I here are having a real conversation. It's not an accident that this is not mainstream media. This is why podcasts are important and why they're so popular today. People want just can we just have a real conversation? But if we were on a show that was only about corporate profits for a media conglomerate, I mean, you certainly know this,
Yeah.
Roseanne, there would be
Yeah.
pressure to make it very different.
Yeah. Well, it was like that in television too. As soon as you accept a sponsor, you're putting the noose around your own neck. So you're better off to pay for it yourself than to pay for people to censor you.
But that's America today. They've got their
Yeah.
tentacles in everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything. It's your health care, it's the food you eat, the carcinogens in your food. Did you read the article that came out recently about the ingredients in a ketchup bottle in the United States versus the ingredients in a ketchup bottle in Canada? It's unbelievable.
No.
So what happens is that there are food companies that have, let's say, potato chips or ketchup or whatever that's composed of one thing here, but has to be another thing in Canada or Europe, because in Canada and Europe they'll say you can't put that carcinogen in our food. There are laws against
I know that's true.
Yeah.
Traveling
it.
the world, and you probably noticed this too. When you travel the world, they actually have way better food than we do. Our food just tastes like plastic.
That's
And,
right, because it is literally plastic. Do you know 46%? And before we finish that, some people say, well, why is that? It's because the carcinogens are the thing that give the food a longer shelf life, which makes more money for the food company. So in terms of the plastics, this plastic thing, so there's this stuff called PFAS. Have you read about PFAS, the forever chemicals? And it's horrifying. And I first heard about it in New Hampshire, but now 40%, 46% of all the water in urban wells in America are filled with these PFAS. They are called
mm,
forever chemicals. They don't break down in the body, and they've even found plastic pieces in human hearts. And
yeah,
this
it
isn't
is.
left versus right. This
No,
shouldn't be left versus right.
no. Do you think it's on purpose? I mean, do you think that, what about that agenda, UN Agenda 2030, where it calls for depopulation? What do you think of that? Or is that just a whole right wing
I think that
conspiracy theory?
we're getting into like no. I think that the conspiracy that we should be worried about is very overt. It's everything we're
Yeah.
talking about. Like when you asked just now about where does that come from. So there was a company in New Hampshire, and it was a French company. And this is another thing. What they were doing in New Hampshire, they would not have been allowed to do legally in France. So there are all these
Right.
things which Europe will say, you can't do that, it's dangerous. And so the European company will say, okay, we'll go to America, they'll let us.
Yeah. Hmm.
So they were spewing these these chemicals into the water in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and the cancer rates were sky high. Finally, the protests about this were so great that Saint Gobain Company has recently said it's not worth it, we're leaving. But now the PFAS are all over the country, and it's because when sometimes people say, "Oh, job killing regulations, get rid of those job killing regulations." No, they weren't job killing regulations. You would actually have to create jobs to actually have people adhere to these things. They're safety regulations. This
I
word
know.
safety regulations, health regulations. And so Europeans, companies that protect their citizens. So we have all these toxins and carcinogens spewing into in pesticides and water and food. This is
Yeah.
not about left versus right. It's about money and those who have it and can influence Congress to make those things possible.
Well,
Versus
it's about a predator's access to its prey, is
that's
how it seems to
exactly what
me.
it is. It is. It's
Mhm.
predatory. It is predatory. And that's why I believe those college loan debts should be forgiven, because they should never have existed. You don't prey on your young.
Yeah, that's crazy.
In the 1970s, going before the 1970s, we had tuition-free college and tech school, which they
I
have
know.
had some other
California, you got
California,
you
Texas, Florida. Remember California? And it was Ronald Reagan that came in and got rid of it, and then they said, "Oh, he's our guy." It's predatory. You don't prey on your young.
you don't prey on your tax base, which that blows my mind when you, but that's
Right.
where we're at.
So we're paying billions of dollars in taxpayer money to subsidize companies that are already making billions of dollars in profit so they can develop products and turn back and price gouge the American people whose
Yeah.
tax dollars had funded what they did to begin with. That's our
Yeah.
relationship to big pharma. That's our relationship to big food. That's our relationship to all of these companies, all of these things.
Yeah. We're paying for our own destruction.
We are paying for our own destruction.
See, I would love to see you in debate with,
Biden.
somebody. Well, not well, yeah, Biden, but that's
He
not
won't
good.
do it. No, he won't debate. He's owned. He's corporate owned.
I mean, do you feel? I don't know how to even approach it, but maybe you, maybe there will be a really accessible third party someday for American people, maybe. And maybe it will encompass real issues that we're all pretty much, most of us, I'll say, concerned about. And maybe it will be for the citizens, and maybe it won't be just for a handful of people at the expense of the many. Maybe that will happen someday. I would certainly hope so, but I don't see it in either party. I just don't.
Well, the problem is the hour is late.
Yeah, it is.
So you and I come from a time when we can talk in long term. Well, someday.
Well, you're right. But I see why you, I mean, I don't know. I just hope everything is, I hope everything gets better and common sense rules the day.
I think can I say something? I think each party needs to look at itself. And I think when you're talking about the cross blaming being an issue, but I rarely see a Republican, and I certainly do not see Democrats at all doing that self-assessment. Is our party in bed with the wrong people? Are we pushing the wrong messaging? Are we wrong on this? Just look in the mirror. I don't see that. And I know we can talk about, third party, or we need this, but those are the people that need to do it first, the people at the top of each party. And I don't feel good about that happening personally. I'm not trying to be
I
negative,
agree.
but
I
I haven't
agree.
seen any part of anyone in politics or involved on that level willing to even consider the fact that they may be wrong.
Well,
Well, that's why I say I really encourage, grandparents to run for office. That's kind of why I did it, because
love what you're
somebody,
saying.
what do you call it? The thing they present, what do you call it? Resume.
Yeah.
It would be, I was a beneficial part of my community, and I helped keep these kids safe, and I was a crossing guard. That's the kind of resume that should matter, not that I worked for this corporation. We should not vote for nobody like that. We should vote for people who cared for their own communities and their own children and the things that matter. I really wish that would happen.
Well, what they say is that you have to have had a career ensconced in the car that drove us into the ditch for us to consider qualified to drive us out of the ditch. So what you and I see as qualification, and you and I would agree on what you just said, that means somebody who's not in the club.
Yeah.
In their club, The George Carlin thing, you're not in. And if you're not in it, how dare you even try to. And Jake, what you said, I mean, I feel that's why so many of the corporatist Democrats don't like me. Because
Right.
I do say the Democratic Party has got to look at its own corporatist leanings.
Yeah. I would say Democrats today are what I didn't like about Republicans in the 80s. I see that in the Democrat Party. I see a uniparty. I see corporate entanglements. I mean, Biden, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the most corrupt presidents I've ever seen. I was born in 1978. And, we are now on the verge of World War III. And people always say that. I'm like, oh, stop it. This is the first time where I think, we're very close. That's a Democrat pushing war. That's a Democrat involved in a proxy war. And Trump, whatever you think about him, when he was president, we were not getting involved in proxy wars, and we were trying to stay off that stage. And I think the Democrats, I think that's one of the things they hated about him the most. And I feel like they're using lawfare and things against him. I'm not saying he's citizen president and all hope. I'm just saying you can see them wanting to make an example of anyone that isn't pushing a uniparty war agenda. And I see that coming from the Democrat Party today more than the Republican Party. I see Republicans talking about jobs, and I see Republicans talking about community much more. And that's weird for me as a lifelong Democrat to see what I see today.
Republicans don't actually, they talk about jobs and community, but their policies do not foster jobs and communities. And when it comes to lining up with the defense budget, the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. Now, when it comes to, and when it comes to,
I expect the Democrats to not do that.
They play their part for the camera.
Right.
We have to discount everything they say, I'm afraid, because I don't believe one of them for 1 minute.
But Marianne, you sound like a Democrat that I grew up with, the way you talk about taking corporation, money out of. I don't see. I just want to finish this point. I don't see Democrats today saying what you're saying.
So you see.